Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings and salutations. Now, it's a little different. Typically, we do meetings in the evening, of course, but I've gotten a lot of inboxes, a lot of asks via YouTube and online, on Facebook, social media, about Marjorie Taylor Greene and about the stimulus. More so about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I originally didn't want to give her too much airtime because I feel like if you feed the monster, it gets bigger. And I personally don't think someone like Miss Greene or Mrs. Greene is really worth the energy and the time. Hello, everyone. I see everyone on screen. Jahaziel, how are you, my friend? Marcia, I may be saying it wrong. And Selena, good afternoon. Typically, I don't give these kind of folks that much airtime, especially when you know that it is for attention. But since we're here, I'm going to give her, a few minutes, and we're going to talk about the stimulus and where it's at. So for those of you who have been under a rock, or maybe you just don't know, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a representative from Georgia in the House, who has ties to, she supports QAnon, and, she's a Trump supporter. He loves her to pieces. Basically, she's that girl. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and this is just background, Marjorie Taylor Greene has made comments about violence against House representatives, government officials. She said that 9/11 didn't happen. Like, did we just magically, imagine that the buildings fell down? She's definitely a big conspiracy theorist. And also, too, I was reading an incident that happened just earlier this year, after the insurrection at the Capitol, where she basically went off on Cori Bush, bitch. Cori Bush is a newly elected congresswoman from Missouri. And she went off on Cori Bush because Cori Bush asked her to wear a mask. Now, in every video you've been seeing of Marjorie Taylor Greene so far, this bitch got on a mask that say free speech, right? She thinks she Prince. Like, bitch, you is not Prince. Like, bitch, ain't nobody trying to hear all of that. You know what I'm saying? But she's allegedly like, that's a thing, okay? So she went off on Cori Bush. Cori just simply asked her, hey, can you put up your mask? Because she was on her phone, screaming at her phone, spit probably flying. People in the house done tested positive for COVID and shit. So she goes on Twitter, going in on Cori Bush and all this stuff. So that was a whole thing. She's also the one that was going to file impeachment charges for Joe Biden as soon as he got into office. Like, this bitch is cuckoo for motherfucking Cocoa Puffs. I don't know where we find these people. She is from Georgia, which that tells me a few things. It tells me for as much progress as Georgia has made, and we really owe a lot of things. We owe our presidency to Georgia, and we owe the Senate to Georgia as well. So don't get me wrong, Georgia and the coalition down there have done a great job. But where they found this bitch at, I just don't know. Like, I don't know. It's always one nut in the family. And so basically, for all of the comments that she's been making about violence and things like that, they voted to basically strip her from a lot of the committee posts, like inside of for those of you not familiar, inside of Congress and Senate and a lot of these government entities, right? They have committees who are assigned a budget committee, the foreign affairs committee, all of these committees that work on specific projects, in whatever branch of government they work in. And so they basically voted to exile her out. Now, of course, the Republicans wasn't really here for that. McCarthy, who is the House Minority Leader, refused to really censure her in regards to that. It was a whole mess. Right now, and I'm going to say this in so many words. Right now, what you're witnessing is a Republican civil war. The Republican Party is trying to keep a strong face, a strong base, but they are literally being ripped apart inside. And reason being is because you have these people who are still, the Trump faction, who part of them are hardcore Trump supporters, and part of that faction is people who are just scared about losing their posts. So they just go along with it because Trump has such a strong influence still on the Republican Party. Then you got the other half of the Republican Party who has sense and say, wait a minute now. We're not going to do this. So there's a lot of infighting going on in regards to the Republican Party as it stands right now. So they're dealing with that. Now, they voted to X her out of the panels on Thursday, yesterday. And I'm going to read you this from this is from the New York Times. The House voted 230 to 199 to remove Ms. Greene from the Education and Budget Committees, with only 11 Republicans joining Democrats to support the move. The action came after Mrs. Greene past statements and espousing of QAnon and other conspiracy theories had pushed her party to a political crossroads. The vote effectively stripped Ms. Greene of her influence in Congress by banishing her from committees critical to advancing legislation and conducting oversight. Party leaders traditionally control the membership of the panels. While Democrats and Republicans have occasionally moved to punish their own members by stripping them of assignments, the majority has never in modern times moved to do so to a lawmaker in the other party. So this is new. Like usually in a more civilized era, each party would govern their people accordingly. Much like what happened with Ilhan Omar in her comments a while back about Israel. She was made to apologize for that. They did address it. The issue with Marjorie Taylor Greene is that McCarthy and the Republican Party leadership in the House basically let this bitch go unchecked. Like, with nothing. And that's where, Big Nance, Mother Nance, had to step in, and say, look, and see, here's the thing. While this is, a lot of it has to do with politics, some of it has to do with national security. Like, they stripped her of from the budget committees and the education committees. Why would I have somebody on an education committee who openly supports conspiracy theories, lies, and unfounded truth? That's not somebody you want working in education, teaching, enacting learning policies. Okay? So I get that. That's not smart. Who does that? Right? So they basically said, look, bitch, you get ready to get fired. Now, Liz Cheney, who is also a Republican, had, spoke out about this. So they was basically looking to have Liz Cheney removed from House leadership. That fell through. Liz Cheney still has her spot. And I feel like, me personally, Liz Cheney still has her spot. It was a pretty unanimous vote. But I feel like Liz Cheney still has her spot because they're trying to save face. And if Liz Cheney had lost her spot, that shows clear discord amongst the party and opens up a cascade of failures for them in the future and with election time, right? And they're really trying to win back those suburbs that a lot of them lost in the last election. Now, the funny thing is, this is where we get into the commentary part. So we got the facts, right? But the thing is, the audacity. And it's always that with these white folks, I'm sorry to say it, in power and in seats is the audacity. And as a black person, and any person of color, but I can speak primarily as a black person who is a professional, you're constantly trained from birth to police yourself. Black people are trained inherently, it's in our DNA, it's ancestral at this point, to be self-aware and to self-police. Black people are trained to read the room. And it's interesting to see that lack of awareness from some of these folks that are sitting in these seats. And honestly, as we talk about it, I don't know if it's really a lack of awareness or I just don't give a damn. So it's like, now you have to question if this is really like this is intentional. And I feel like it really is, because no one else would be able to do anything like this. And like I said, I really didn't address her previously because I didn't want to give someone who's clearly off their rocker this much press. But here's the thing. Here's what I want to say to any child or young person, teenager, college student who's watching this. If you have not learned anything from the last 4 years, it should be that just because you don't do the best job in school, just because you may have a few skeletons in your closet, that does not mean that you cannot ascend to higher heights. Because some of the examples and people who are sitting in these chairs are terrible people. That whole morality, oh, you're a bad person. Sis, look at who's leading the country. So I never want to hear, I get annoyed when I hear teachers sometimes or people tell children, if you know what you're doing now in high school is going to dictate the rest of your life. And to a certain degree, it will influence it, but there's still some room for opportunities there. Because only in America can a conspiracy theorist rise to getting a House seat. That's only in America. Well, in some other countries, maybe, but especially in America. And also, too, it kind of, I never want to really hear anyone saying that, the word is that's usually used when a black person is passionate about something or has a view is they're aggressive. They're taking it the wrong way. They're polarizing. I really never want to hear any of that. Not in the government anymore, not in office staff meetings, not in anything. Because the reality is, I have never seen any black professional act like that. I'm not at this level. Clarence Thomas tries it, but he don't act like this. And I just think that it's something that we have to re-examine that a lot, and it's annoying. But anyway, the stimulus. Okay. So, what I will say about this is Biden, he said he was going to start moving, and he's moving. Okay? So they got the stimulus through the House and the Senate. Well, they got it through the Senate. Okay? So, 1.9 trillion is in this plan. Okay? So, according to the Post here, after 15 hours, okay, so I'm going to read this article. Because it's some fine print here that is going to show you that no matter what, it's a negotiation. And you're not going to be too surprised, but it kind of, in reading this article, it made me chuckle a little bit. Right? So after a 15-hour voting session that stretched overnight, Vice President Kamala Harris arrived early in the morning to Senate where she cast her first tie-breaking vote. The Senate adopted the budget measure by a vote of 51 to 50 at about 5:30 a.m. In the marathon session known as a vote-a-rama, and for which more than 800 amendments were drafted, Senate Democrats maneuvered through a series of politically tricky amendments that Republicans sought to attach to their budget plan. They also endorsed a number of ideas that could drive negotiations on Mr. Biden's stimulus measure, embracing a proposal to exclude high earners from direct payments of up to $1,400, an idea that the president and leading Democrats have already said they are open to. So let's stop right there. So depending on how much money you make, basically it sounds like they're going to be lowering that threshold for the payout. So if you're doing well, then you're not going to get that payout. And I'm not mad at that. But here's where I have a question. That money comes from taxpayers. Am I going to get as a single, because I'm going to be honest, as a single person with no children, the government taxes the fuck out of me and I end up paying so much money to taxes and I don't get any breaks. I have to either buy a home or do something crazy to get some kind of tax break. And I feel like you've got to make it make sense to me. And this is not me shading anyone, but I have to speak because we often talk about what can we do for families, what can we do for single parents, and I'm not against that at all. But as a single person with no kids, you take hella taxes out of me during the year. At the end of the year, 9 times out of 10, I have to pay you more fucking money, and then I'm not getting the stimulus check, but my tax money is paying some of that stimulus check, but I'm not getting any type of tax break. So that's a valid question and a valid point. And I need to hear where do I fit in this? Yes, I'm sorry, I don't have kids. My bad. I'm sorry, I'm single. My bad. I should be able to get some kind of tax break. Either I'm not going to have to pay you as much at the end of the year, or when I go to file taxes, or I'm going to get some type of tax incentive where I'm not getting taxed as much every paycheck. But you have to give me something, because if you're not going to include me in these payments, but I'm paying towards the payment, you got to make it make sense. I'm already paying tax money to the state and federal government for social services that I can't get. I have to be destitute or unemployed to get food stamps if I'm a single person. So I need to have there needs to be something in the pot for me, because I've been paying into the pot for a long time. I'm paying to a social security system that I'm probably not going to benefit from. My generation, by the time we get to the age where we actually should be able to cash in on social security that we've been paying since some of us were 14 and 15 years old, we're not even going to be able to fucking get it. So I need something. As a working class person, I need something. And like I said, that's not any shade. But we often ignore these folks. Oh, you ain't got no kids. You said you'll be all right. No, but I'm like, you're taking my money. You're taking my money. Like, wait, like you're taking my money. So I think I'm a little on the fence about that. But nevertheless, and the creation of a new form of child care allowance for low and middle income families. Senators also agreed to bar any increase in the federal minimum wage, a centerpiece of Mr. Biden's plan during the pandemic. Despite the amendments, the process left Mr. Biden's plan largely intact. Okay? The resolution will go next to the House, where Democrats do not require Republican support to approve it. While the measure does not have the force of law, the action paves the way for the next step in the budget reconciliation process, which will ultimately allow Democrats to advance Mr. Biden's plan without Republican votes. Okay? Now, The proposal did not pass the Senate without some setbacks for Democrats. And a potential sign of trouble ahead for a major plank of Mr. Biden's plan, the Senate agreed to prohibit any minimum wage increase during the pandemic. The measure passed by a voice vote, meaning that Democrats were not attempting to defeat it. So they're not raising minimum wage in the pandemic. Now listen to why. Mr. Biden's stimulus package would increase the wage to $15 per hour by 2025, and Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, who has been leading the push for the wage increase in the Senate, said he was not contesting not raising the minimum wage because he never sought to raise it during the pandemic. So that's not saying Bernie is against raising minimum wage, but he's against raising minimum wage in the pandemic. Now, the argument for that is this, that because, businesses are suffering, which they are, it's a lot going on, and things of that nature, when businesses are shuttering, why would you raise the minimum wage and they already in so much debt? Here's my answer to that. If y'all have y'all issued these stimulus packages, y'all issued a stimulus before, where X amount of dollars was supposed to go to businesses, you put X amount of dollars in the stages and things like that. If you're not going to raise the minimum wage because you want to look out for the businesses, which I get, right? If you're not going to raise the minimum wage, then we need to be looking at rent freezes. There needs to be some type of federal referendum where for 2021 and 2022, federal mandates that you cannot raise rent for 2 years. Not saying that you can't collect your rent, but if you're not going to raise minimum wages to keep up with the price of inflation in world markets, then cap the rent increases. Cap that. Cap late fees on rent if people pay late. Things like that. There are ways that you can scratch one back. You can scratch both backs, so to speak. Right? So let's put a cap on rent increases and late fees on rent. Also, too, let's put a cap on overdraft fees for banks because you've already given banks money. So let's say this. If we're not going to raise minimum wage for our federal workers and for our workers in general, let's go ahead and cap overdraft fees. Banks can no longer charge overdraft fees. And even if you just do a freeze on it for the year 2021, right? Let's do cap and overdraft fees, whereas though if the customer does not have enough money to cover the transaction, reject it. Don't cover the transaction. And if you do, then that's on you. You have to then enter the collections process to make sure you get that money. But don't accept the transaction. Reject it. It's very simple. It's a computer system. Yes, I am giving slight policy talks. Reject that transaction because especially if you're with certain banks, right? If you have $50 in your account and your phone bill comes due and that's $100, but hey, they done let the transaction sit for so long, you went and swiped for something at CVS that was $2, $3. Now you're getting charged at $35, $38, however much they charge per transaction. Even though you had enough money to cover those small transactions, they're going to hit you in the head because they're going to push through that big transaction and then charge you not only $35 for that, but they're going to charge you $35 for the $2 for the juice you got from CVS, $3 for the extra value meal that you got from McDonald's. So now you're looking at $105 for a $60 purchase. Okay, so those are small policy implements that could help the end user, which is the citizen. And also, you're not killing banks by doing that for a year. You're not killing landlords and saying that they can't collect. What you're saying is no late fees, no rent increases. Okay, those are small things that you can do. Also, too, if you're not going to raise minimum wage and you're only going to give X amount of people things like that, or certain plans, then y'all need to work with the Comcast of the world, okay, and the Spectrums of the world for my people on the West Coast, and say, hey, let's come up with some kind of government initiative, or if we give you X amount of dollars, whereas though there's a flat cap on what people pay for their internet service for business class data. Okay? Whereas though each customer pays, because honestly, I feel like we're paying way too much for internet. $100 and some a month for a business class internet is ridiculous in this era. But let's say you have a flat rate of $50, unlimited data cap. This is the stimulus the Corona service plan. Okay? That way, that encourages parents and employers to say, okay, my employee's not getting hit in the head with internet. We can keep folks home while we're getting this vaccination effort rolled out that's taking incredibly too long to do. Okay? And nobody's getting hit in the head for internet. They're not paying $100 and some. Small things like that on your phone bill. Not saying that phone companies can't collect, and if you don't pay after a certain amount of time, they can't disconnect. But let's cut out the $25 late fees. Because a late fee isn't for services rendered. A late fee is basically a penalty, and someone said it the other day, a poor tax. Let's cut that out. And that way, you're still getting your revenue. Nobody is saying that your business won't get your revenue or that people don't have to pay their bills. But it does give those small wins, those small changes will help you. Somebody said just run for office. Thank you. Those small things will help big change. And also too, let's look at it like this. You roll out policies like that impact the general public. If I'm a politician and I'm introducing those bills or those executive actions, that looks good on me when it's election time. All I got to do is roll out my proof of works. And people won't have an issue voting. It won't be a contest. Yes, you'll still have those divided people for political reasons, racial reasons, or what have you. But if you can roll out a plan that say, hey, this, that, and the third, when our governor here, Hogan, rolled out the plan for free community college to new students coming out, that's how he got the second term. That's how he stayed intact. Small wins. I feel like sometimes we trip over a dollar to get to a penny, and politicians do this often. Okay? I think we need to look at those type of changes, and I think it would make everybody happy on a lot of different fronts and a lot of different levels. As far as I'm concerned. I see a lot of you saying I should run for office. I have way too many skeletons in my closet for that. And when you're a politician, you're under a different level of scrutiny. I mean, look at what I do online. Maybe my mind will change in the future. Who knows? I don't want to say never, but as of right now, it's not something that is really in my scope. But I've thought about it, but we'll see. But nevertheless, I know you guys joined me today. And I want to thank you for that. As always, this is our first midday meeting, which we've really never done. And I appreciate it. If you're following on YouTube, you can actually watch the recap in the show on repeat on YouTube at youtube.com/Secretary of Shade. You can also follow me online via social media at Dapper Damitis. If you would like to contribute to the channel and this research, you can also send donations via Cash App or Venmo at Dapper Damitis. With that being said, you guys have a great weekend. I'm going to watch this Zendaya movie tonight with Denzel's son. We got WandaVision coming out. Super Bowl this weekend. Jasmine singing the national anthem. I mean, we got things to do. But on that note, you all have a great weekend. I love you dearly. Be blessed, and I will talk to you soon.